the higher education that you have been fortunate to have. Therefore, the only way they can earn a living is by manual labor, either in the farms or in factories in urban centers. It is only the fortunate few like you who can get well-paying jobs in manufacturing and also in service sector. Therefore, the fortunate few, especially the engineers who are passed out or who are going to pass out from here in the future also, like Mr. Balasubramaniam said, who are going to be the creators, you have a duty not only to yourself and your family, but more importantly, a duty to serve the society around you and this nation. Like I said, unless you are an educated person where you can easily find a job as managers in manufacturing factories or software or BPOs or finance or healthcare, for the lesser educated, it has to be only manufacturing jobs, that too low-paying manufacturing jobs. Therefore, I request of you, as many as possible over here, if you can strive to be entrepreneurs, utilize the science and technological skills that you have imbibed in this wonderful institution, Bannariamman Institute of Technology, and set up some manufacturing unit, however small it is, so that a lot of the downtrodden, the unfortunate, can be given jobs and they can make a living, a better living than what they do at the moment. It is most unfortunate that a poor nation, a developing nation like India, the service sector has a larger portion of the GDP and not the manufacturing sector. Unless the manufacturing sector overtakes and takes a larger percent of the GDP, there is no salvation for the lesser educated and the downtrodden. Unless there is salvation for them, our nation cannot go into the path of a middle-income country and eventually a developed nation in conjunction with the service sector. You might have apprehensions. Will I succeed as an entrepreneur? If you take a look at the traits and skills of successful leaders and try to inculcate them, I'm sure you will succeed in your endeavor. Yes, you might have pitfalls, but eventually you will be successful. This morning, Mr. Vijay Kumar and Mr. Balasubramaniam took Mr. Seshashayi and myself around your wonderful library. I saw a lot of good sayings over there, a lot of business leaders also there. I also saw Indira Nooyi's portrait over there. Now, all of you are aware that Indira Nooyi is the CEO of PepsiCo, a very large multinational headquartered in USA. In spite of being born in Chennai and being an Indian who later emigrated to America, and more importantly, in spite of being a woman in this yet male-dominated world, she has risen to be the CEO of PepsiCo. She is a well-admired business leader all over the world. And this is what she had to say what it takes to be a successful leader. If you go into YouTube or Google and say Indira Nooyi 5C model of leadership, you will be able to understand what I'm trying to say. The first C, according to her, is competence. Be good in your chosen field. Be a student throughout your life and continuously strive to improve your competence. That is the only way people will look up to you and come to you to solve their problems. The second C is have the courage and confidence to speak out so that you're able to convince others to accept your ideas. The third C is communication, like what I said earlier, what the successful alumni of Stanford had said. Good written and oral communication so that you're able to talk with clarity so that others understand what you want and they accept your ideas. The fourth C is consistency. Don't keep on changing your mind. Be consistent in the way you work or your thought processes so that people who work with you or people who work under you and look up to you as a leader understand clearly what is required of them and they are able to deliver good results. I'm not saying that blindly you have to be consistent in your thought process. When you find, yes, you've gone down the wrong path and you need a change, yes, please change. Then. The fifth and final C is your personal compass. Without integrity, even if you have the other four C's, in the long run, you're not going to succeed. So if you follow Indira Nooyi's 5C model of leadership, inculcate these habits, even though you're not a leader now, you're bound to succeed in all the endeavors. Finally, before I conclude, I would like to repeat what John F. Kennedy said on the 20th of January 1961, when he was taking over as the President of USA. He said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." Similarly, I request you to ponder on these words and request you to ask yourselves, what is it you can do for the society? What is it you can do for the nation? Strive to make a difference. You're stepping out to meet your destiny in the open world. I wish you all success. May God be with you. Thank you.
I invite the Chief Guest, Sri R. Sesasai, Chairman, Infosys, to deliver the Graduation Day address.
Respected Chairman, Sri Balasubramaniam, my dear friend, Mr. Vijay Mohan, members of the board, members of the faculty, and dear young graduates of the day, let me add my own words of very warm congratulations and felicitations to all those who are graduating today, and also to the proud parents and the members of faculty who have made this happen. It's truly a big privilege to be a part of this function and to get to know this institution. As Vijay Mohan was saying this morning, we went around the campus very briefly. Mr. Balasubramanian took us to your new library. I believe it is not yet open, but from what I have seen, I can say that this is one of the, perhaps the best library infrastructure that I have seen in this country. Very comparable to what I have seen abroad. So this institute, I can see, has phenomenal potential to be amongst the top institutions, education institutions of this country. At this point of time when graduate students are stepping out, most of you are already in some job or the other, and I'm sure that you will hear a lot of advice. This is a time to take a lot of advice. But I'm going to tell you something which is a bit of, shall I say, matter of discouragement. And that is that it is a conversation that I had chance to have with a friend of mine who is doing work on the brain. And he said something very interesting to me. He said that children in the age group of 1 to 5, from the time they are born up to 5, when they are 5 years old, they have something like a few million times more ability to learn, assimilate knowledge than between 5 and 15. If you stop and think, this is very true. A baby who comes into this world has to learn this world around it. Who is a human being, who is an animal, who is a bird, who is big, who is small, what is hot, what is cold. The entire world gets into the brain of this child, and the neurons fire 1,000,000 times more to absorb this knowledge. And after that, the propensity to learn starts coming down. And he told me something which I didn't want to hear as someone who is as old as I am. And he said that the propensity to learn goes up to about 30, 35 and then stops dropping. You take much more time to learn than people who are in their 20s, if you're in the 40s. You take more time to learn if you're in the 60s than those in the 40s. And I like to believe what he said, because I may be the chairman of Infosys, but if I have a bug in my computer, I have to run to my grandnephew to fix it, not even my son. My grandnephew is all of 11 years old to fix it. So the propensity to learn is pretty high when you're young. And you have another 10 years at the age that you're in to take in as much knowledge and to assimilate as much knowledge and to expand your learning as much as you can. And this is therefore the golden period. What is going to aid this happen? What will aid this phenomenal capacity for you, which is open to you for another 10, 15 years, for you to acquire this knowledge, is this huge technology, which Mr. Balasubramanian referred. At a click of a button today, you have the entire world, the knowledge available to you on anything. I started to read Quran a few months ago and went into learning Arabic. Very interesting. There are more than 100 Arabic tuition classes online. You can choose what you want. Step by step, it takes you through. It even corrects your intonation. It's not merely knowledge of the physical kind, even creative world. You can write a poetry. In fact, this morning I was asking how many people use MOOC here. You're aware of MOOC, right? How many of you are using MOOC? Are you aware of MOOC? M-O-O-C? This is the massive open architecture available for online learning. You can go into MOOC free of cost, learn anything. A few weeks ago, I wanted to try whether there was something available for creative work. So I wrote a piece of poetry and then went into one of the classes in MOOC, which is an open university. And it's very interesting. It analyzes your poetry. You get the feedback about whether you've written a good poem or a bad poem. It tells you how to correct your poems in future. It compares your poem with the master's and tells you whether you are a miserable poet, whether you have any chance at all. All of that is learnable. The world of knowledge is incredibly at your fingertips. And in these next 5, 10, 15 years, we are not going to be grabbing this knowledge and increasing the base of learning that we have. We have missed a huge opportunity. That's the power that you have. As youth, your ability to learn, assimilate this knowledge. What is this world about? What is the law of physics? What is it that is happening in the universe around us? What is the latest development in thinking in terms of black hole? What is today the medical research saying with regard to placebo? Everything is available to you. The what of knowledge is simply at a click. So that's the power. Therefore, I think that in the next 5, 10 years, the examination that we have, the system, which is already obsolete in many ways, will completely disappear. There's no need for anybody to take a bit and sneak it into the examination hall in the sole of the shoes. You should be allowed to have a tablet, and you should be able to access information and knowledge that is available from the tablet. But what is being tested is not what of the knowledge, but why of the knowledge, how much you're going to apply. So that's the what part of this. But this is not even the small part of the potential that you have as youth. The more important part of the potential that you have as youth is the why part of this. Why leads to discoveries. Young people are uniquely placed to ask this why. Because curiosity is a part of children, part of youth. Children are very, very curious. They keep asking questions, right? Why blue? Why is the tree growing with stems all around? Why should the leaf be green? You have every question. Why is the elephant having big ears? So the father says, well, the elephant has big ears because it's got to swat the flies that come. And then the child says, then why is it that we don't have big ears to flat eyes? And the father says, okay, we have hands to swat flies. Then why does the elephant not have hands to do that? Because it has got ears. And then the mother comes and says, don't keep asking father because he's always very busy. And then the child says that why is it every time I ask a question, father is always busy? So you have this curiosity of children. And you have curiosity of young people, young minds to say, why is it happening this way? And mind you, if you go through the history of all Nobel Prize winners, the search that they started, which led them to a discovery, started very early in their life. The why should this happen? Why is it that the physical properties of an element is behaving like this? Why is the chemical reaction taking place in the manner in which it takes place? The why of that starts happening when you have just assimilated knowledge and you're curious to find out. To some people, it happens that they find the answers very quickly. You all know about Marie Curie, right? Marie Curie, all of you know? The Nobel Prize winner, the first woman Nobel Prize winner to have 2 Nobel Prizes, one in physics and one in chemistry. Look at that. And when did she find the answer in terms of radioactivity? When she was 27. She got a Nobel Prize in 35, but she had made a discovery in 27. So the why of the question is what leads you to discovery. And that's the That's the phenomenal power that you have as youth to ask the question why. But I think this is again just one part of the huge potential that you have. The third part of this potential is to ask this question, why not? And that's the most important part. If you're young people, you ought to ask this question, why is status quo the way it is? Why should society behave this way that it is currently behaving? Why is the social contract in this manner? The why not will follow then and say, why should I not do something different? It is this why not which has led to inventions. Vijay Mohan was wondering why he was invited. There is nothing to wonder. All entrepreneurs have asked these questions, why not? Why can't I do something now different? I must say that I have a great respect for my friend Vijay Mohan for having pioneered a lot of auto electronics. And that came about because he's saying, why not I do it? Why can't I develop sensors which is 50% of the cost at which Bosch or Siemens are doing it? Why is it that young people today are leading the technology revolution? This morning when I went to the library, I saw several posters of young people, Larry Page, Sergey Brin, all of them. When did they all begin? They began their enterprise in their 20s. Why is it that this technology field is full of people in their 20s and 30s? I've been mentoring some youngsters in startups. I'm amazed at their ability to challenge the current status quo. Nothing is holding them back. The audacity with which they can question the current and say that why not I do this, that is the phenomenal power of youth. Arthur Koestler, who is a very, very celebrated author, once said, you know what? Eastman Kodak, you've heard of Eastman Kodak, right? Which is Kodak is the inventor of photography. He made a very wonderful observation, that was about 30 years ago. And he said, Eastman Kodak will never ever discover instant photography. Why? Because the scientist working in Eastman Kodak who discovered photography to start with, they all know why instant photography will not work. So the guys in Polaroid, which is a small young company in the industry, they were not burdened with the knowledge of the past failures. They did not have a baggage to carry. They said, yes, of course we can make instant photography work. And Polaroid was the first to get off the block. Who is now the largest camera company in the world? Not Eastman Kodak, not Polaroid. Who's the largest? Any guess? Any guess? Canon? I'm afraid no. Samsung. That's right. The largest cameras, the largest producer of cameras is not any of these guys. It's Samsungs and Nokias. They're the largest photographers. Why? Because they said, why not? Why not we be the head? Tesla, the company which is doing electric cars, is going to be leading a revolution. It's not General Motors and Toyota who are the largest producers who are leading the revolution in electric cars. Or for that matter, even driverless cars, which I'm sure all of you heard about. Driverless cars are now a reality. That revolution is not being done by the older players. It is by the young players in the industry. Those who do not have the baggage of the past. Those who are not burdened by the failures of the past. And they have nothing to fear. This fearlessness, which Vijay Mohan alluded to, that fearlessness of the youth is what must lead you on to say, why not? And that's what is the basis of enterprise. That's what is the basis for bringing about a change. And let me go to the last piece of this. It is neither the what of knowledge, nor the why of knowledge, nor even the why not of knowledge that is going to propel the youth forward in this country. We talk about dividend, demographic dividend. You heard our Prime Minister talk about the 3 Ds, the demographic dividend, the fact that we have 60% of the population below the age of 35, and therefore India is going to be a superpower as a result of youth. And a lot of people who I meet all over the world keep talking about this youth power in India. And what do they mean by this youth power in India? Because youth can produce, they can add value, they are employed, they have the purchasing power, they spend, they create huge markets, and therefore India is going to be an attractive destination. And that's the demographic dividend that they are talking about. To me, that is not the demographic dividend. To me, the demographic dividend, the fact that we have youth power is because we have the youth power to make changes. It's the youth who will drive the change. And therefore, that is what is the latent power, the most important power that youth have in this country. And what do I mean by this? How does this change go about? I have to go back to Gandhiji. The most eloquent words on change were spoken by Gandhiji. And his words were, be the change that you want to see in the world. Be the change that you want to see around the world. Look at and think about it. There are very important elements in that. 3 elements. Element 1 is that you have to bring about a change. You must think of a change. Number 2, think of a change as just not thinking. Be that. Do something about it, the change. And number 3, that change must impact the world. It's about your dream. If you want to make a change that impacts the world, that's fine. If you want to impact a society, that's fine. If you want to impact the organization that you're working for by making a change, by designing a new product differently, which will bring down the cost by 50%, or taking care of the machines in a way that the machine breakdown will come down by 50%, whatever. Apply your knowledge to make the change, which has an impact beyond you. And he said, be the change that you want to see around the world. And my hero on this is a very unlikely person. And this person is called, his name is Dashrath Manjhi. If you Google for Dashrath Manjhi, you will hear his story. You will read his story. But let me say, encapsulate his story. Dashrath Manjhi, he was married to a girl, a lady called Falguni. One day, when Falguni Devi was taking the meal for her husband, Manjhi, she tripped and fell and died. Why does this happen? Because the village in which Dashrath Manjhi was living was separated from the town by a hill. So anyone who wanted to have medical attention had to go around the hill to the town. 55 kilometers around the hill to the town, because there was no road across the hill. So medical attention was not possible in time, so Falguni Devi died. At that time, Dashrath Manjhi, he could have written petitions, he could have gone to the MLA and say, how can you not have a road? Look at what has happened. Somebody who's in the city will sit in the television studio and argue endlessly about, what is wrong with the government, why is it not spending the right sums of money, why are the roads not getting built, gripe about it, right? Criticize everybody else other than themselves. That's a great propensity. We all say that we are in a traffic jam. We are never in a traffic jam. We are the traffic jam. So we would have done all that. Dashrath Manjhi didn't do that. He took a chisel and a hammer and went about breaking the hill. 22 years, day in and day out, he broke the hill and he constructed this road across the hill, 360 feet long, 30 feet wide, 25 feet deep. all by himself. Now, he wanted to see a change. He wanted to see people taking up and acting to solve the problem, not petitioning, not debating, not griping. That's what Gandhiji meant. Be the change that you want to see around the world. Doshat Manji was an extraordinary person who, by a simple act of commitment, demonstrated that yes, you can change the world, you can make 55 kilometers trudging to be eliminated with a road that is only 15 kilometers, and therefore access to medical facilities would be right, and then the entire village benefited from that. That is the power of your belief, that is the power of your commitment to the cause, and that is the change that you need to bring. Now, that could be anything that you want to do. So it could be the acquisition of knowledge of what you want to do. It is a question of asking why it is in this manner, why the current dispensation, the current rules, the current theory, current algorithm is in this manner. Ask why not do something different, which will make things easier, cheaper, better, and go about doing this yourself. In this case, take the chisel and the hammer, and in maybe another case, start a company, start an enterprise, or make a change in the way that you work in the shop floor. Make a change to the machine that you're working, make the change to the tooling that you're using, but do change. That's what is the advice and the guidance that you've had from great leaders. I want to end with a very recent experience that I had. I was sitting in a conference last year in San Jose, and this was a conference on artificial intelligence. And that morning I was looking out of the window, and there was this beautiful sun rising out of the Bay Area. And then it struck to me a poem that all of us have read of Subramanya Bharati in our school days. The poem is about, as you know, Subramanya Bharati saw the future so much ahead. He wrote poems celebrating freedom. Aduvome Palli Paduvome was written 15 years before the country got freedom, because he could envision that, he could see that. So it occurred to me that this poem that we had all read, Poluthu Pularndhathu Yam Seitha Davattal, I'd always wondered, Poluthu Pularndhathu Yam Seitha Davattal, Poluthu Dinodhan Kalayila Suryan Varudhu, adukku enna davam seiya venum adukku. Then it occurred to me, Poluthu Pularndhathu Yam Seitha Davattal, புண்மை இருட்கணம் போயின யாவும் எழும் பசும் பொற்சுடர் எங்கனும் பரவி எழுந்து விளங்கியது அறிவெனும் இரவி. What Bharatiya referred to was not the sun, the astronomical body that you see in the morning. He was referring to Arivenum Iravi, the power of knowledge, the sun of knowledge. And he celebrated that so many years ahead to say that there is going to be a flourishing of knowledge. There's going to be a sun of knowledge that rises in this universe. And we will be the leaders of that, because in this knowledge revolution, India is poised to be the leader. That's why he said, Arivenum Iravi. And we have to be poised as the leaders of a knowledge revolution, and knowledge has always been at a premium in this country. That knowledge can only come about as a result of the youth power, which has got the capability to learn, assimilate, ask questions of why and why not, and then go and implement that. And that's the power that you have. I'm delighted to be part of this function, and I once again felicitate all of you for a glorious future. Thank you.